My name is Thomas Hamilton. I'm the VP Strategy and Operations at Ross Intelligence. So very briefly, we are an artificial intelligence company focusing on legal research. We started out of University of Toronto. It's really the birthplace of modern artificial intelligence research and theory. We are headquartered in San Francisco, although a lot of our AI research happens up in Toronto now. I'm based in San Francisco. I spend about 1 week a month in Toronto, and then the rest at events like this, mainly. In terms of the goal for today, I'm going to sort of explain conceptually what does artificial intelligence mean, and then describe a little bit how AI is being used in other industries before zeroing in on, I think, why everyone is here, which is to talk about how AI already is being used in law, how I think our expectations of the legal technology we use is going to continue to evolve as basically the companies building the tech you guys are going to use in the future become more sophisticated and create tools that are easier to use as well as very powerful. I always find that the best way to start a presentation is with a story. So like any good story, we have to start at the beginning. In my case, that is here. So this is my law school. I went to school at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. I was able to study both common law and civil law because it's in Quebec, sort of like if you studied in Louisiana, the United States. Early on in my education, because we're studying two different legal systems at the same side, I was very interested in terms of how language is used to describe similar concepts, both from English common law to civil law, but also how English and French are used sort of simultaneously in the same system where I'm from. So going through school, most of my friends, we all try to get jobs either in New York, Chicago, Palo Alto, or Toronto. So I was lucky enough to get an offer to come here. This is the Toronto skyline. I think actually, I love any chance to use these things. I think I was in that building right there. It's kind of like Darth Vader's headquarters, like very black and evil looking. So it's a very interesting time to be there. I got exposed to a lot of great work. I was trying to get as much additional exposure to some of the work some of the corporate partners did. That's some really great tech clients. So while I was there, I introduced some of my friends who just founded an AI company, incidentally called Ross Intelligence, to some folks at the firm. From there, things took off very, very quickly. And sort of a few months later, Dens came on as one of our first partners, as well as one of our first investors, which is a very big deal. This is back in 2014. So really sort of one of the first times a law firm had ever done that with a tech company. We were all competing for sort of permanent final offers from a different group at the firm. In my year, everyone wanted to work in the corporate department. You know, I think there's like 9 of us wanted a spot. There was 3 spots available. It got very weird at the end of that year. So I was lucky enough to get an offer. I was thrilled. As part of the offer, you're given a 3-month sabbatical. So my plan had been to go down to South America, keep working on my Spanish, kind of hang out, enjoy a nice vacation. But the company, unfortunately for me, the company I had just introduced, Ross, had been accepted into Y Combinator. So it's a startup incubator. It's created companies like Dropbox, Reddit, Airbnb. And if you get accepted into that, you have to move down to California. So they convinced me, look, come through California. It's going to be fun. You can learn how to surf. It's going to be great. You know, just relax. Like, you don't have to work hard. It's a startup. And then go back to your corporate law firm. So I ended up moving right by here. So this is the Googleplex. I ended up spending my summer here. Fell completely in love with what was happening, A, at the company, but B, as I learned more and more about how artificial intelligence was already being applied in other industries and had a lot of not only very obvious applications, but really promising applications, especially when it comes to natural language processing with respect to the law. So a long, dramatic story short, I delayed going back by a year. Partway through the year, I did the honorable thing, and I took a red-eye flight back to Toronto in the middle of the week. I met my boss and said I'm not coming back. So I've been with Ross Intelligence ever since. So that's the background of what I'm doing standing in front of you guys. What I'm going to talk about now is what is artificial intelligence. I think there's a lot of discussion now, especially at events like this, sort of A, overhyping AI, B, having a lot of creative license with headlines, like robot lawyers are going to replace our jobs, that kind of thing. That is baloney. We'll come to that in a little bit, but I like to start off with that. When someone talks about artificial intelligence now, they're really talking about 4 key pillars, and we'll go into those in a second. To the extent that artificial intelligence is applied in a different way now than it was in the past, it's a function of three things. So first of all, massive increases in computing power, meaning that even a small company can have access to very, very powerful computing, both on-premise, but also through cloud computing with something like Amazon Web Services. B, the arrival of big data, which I'm sure you guys hear about all the time in your practice. So this continues to accelerate more and more. And lastly, with continued development of artificial intelligence research algorithms. So the first component of the four for artificial intelligence, really the one that underpins everything, is machine learning. Machine learning is the capacity for a software system to learn how to do things it was not explicitly instructed to do. So instead of needing coders to code exactly what a software system is supposed to do, you now have AI systems that are able to learn without direct instruction from humans, meaning that as they have access to very large data sets, they can learn to do things they weren't taught initially how to do. That really underpins everything that's possible with AI. Secondly, speech recognition. So this is the ability for an AI system to hear the verbal communication we give it, and then to perform specific actions based off of it. Classic example of this, also classic example of how something's AI until it becomes mainstream, and then it's just like annoying, boring technology we complain about, is Siri, right? Alexa, Google Home, anything like that. Thirdly, visual recognition. So this is the ability for an AI system to interpret visual signals in the world around it. A great one in terms of sort of our exposure to discussion of AI in regulatory conversations is self-driving cars, everything that's happening right now with Uber and with Tesla. And then the last one, and the most important one for us, is natural language processing. So this is the ability for us to communicate to a software system as if you're communicating to another human, and then for that software system to return highly relevant information in the same format that a human might do so. In terms of what that looks like, it means moving away from very sort of brute force keyword or Boolean-based communication with the system to something much more holistic. So, using an example from a favorite song of mine, if you look at this sentence, born in a small town, she took the midnight train going anywhere. Lots of things that can trip up a system based off of keyword or Boolean-based search. What is a midnight train? Is it a train leaving at midnight? Is it something different? What makes the town small? As systems continue to get smarter and smarter, they're able to parse through very complex communications, much longer than this, and then understand the relevance of the different words. How is AI being used right now? So this is a photo of Jeff Bezos, of course. This is sort of like kind of geeky, nerdy Jeff Bezos in 1998. I sell books. This is terrifying, alpha predator Jeff Bezos in 2017. I sell whatever I want. And why I like to use that example is that some of the biggest technology companies in the world now publicly describe themselves as artificial intelligence companies. So companies like Microsoft, like Amazon, like Google, and so on. Now, it doesn't stop there. So a lot of other industries that you wouldn't typically think of as super tech forward also use AI. So ag tech is doing incredible stuff in the AI space. Beauty companies. So L'Oreal, by no means a small company, but not necessarily one you'd associate with really cutting-edge artificial intelligence technology, is snapping up all sorts of AI companies. One of the things they're doing is augmented reality. So with visual recognition systems, you can take a photo of yourself and then see what I think maybe this actually might be seeing what color of lipstick you might want to use. So another example of where a big company, but not the most tech forward. And then one of the best examples is medicine. So diagnosis of tumors across the board, and one that really relates to what we do as lawyers, right? Because as doctors, highly trained, highly educated, you have to take in a huge amount of information and then make the right diagnosis, very similar to what we do as lawyers. Okay, so how can AI be used in law? Let's think of the history of how we've used technology. Initially, the best technology we had to find answers to legal questions was this. So very expensive leather-bound books. If you worked at a very profitable law firm 100 years ago, or you were lucky enough to be a law professor at a great law school, you could, with enough time and enough patience, get answers to your legal questions. If you weren't lucky enough to be one of those two people, you went without a lot of legal information. So all that changes, of course, with this. So the personal computer, and I would say on top of that, online search as well. And what's interesting that people don't often remember is that the law was actually a very early mover when it came to online search. We lost I guess, our momentum, I would say, since then. We were actually a very early mover on that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through a very fast recorded demo of a system we released a few months ago. This is called EVA. If anyone has a laptop here, please stop listening to me. Pull it out if you have Wi-Fi. Go to eva.rossintelligence.com and sign up. It'll be a lot more interesting than hearing me talk about it. Basically, we released this for free at Legal Week in New York in January, I believe, maybe early February. The idea was to release an AI tool that is so easy to use that even us as lawyers will jump on, try it out, feel comfortable playing around with it. So in terms of how it works, what you're going to see here is I've dragged and dropped a brief up into this box. So now you can drag a brief, memorandum, motion pleading. It's immediately showed all the cases of the negative treatments. Looks like there's 29 up here. I'm clicking into one. You get to stay inside of EVA. You can move through the case itself. You can check for negative treatments, positive treatments, anything like that. From there, it's immediately reproduced the entire body of the document I was looking at. It's hyperlinked to every case that's mentioned in there. You just click on the hyperlink, think of like Wikipedia. It opens up as well. You can look at positive treatments, negative treatments, make sure it's still a good law. From there, imagine there's interesting language you want to learn more about. You highlight it, click on Find Similar Language. It'll bring back cases across all American case law, discussing that concept of law, not relying on keyword-based search. What that means is you can look for serendipitous discovery of discussions or question of law. If you want a summary, I'm typing in my substantive question of law into this box right here. I'm going to click on Generate Overview, and then in a couple seconds, it will summarize the entire facts of the case from the general to specific, showing the exact case numbers. You can even copy it to your clipboard to make it easier to paste for you guys. Another example here, if we want the exact wording from a specific case from Wong Sun v. United States, similarly, I click on Find Similar Language. And then the last thing we built in is free unlimited case search as well. So one of the things I was asked to speak about coming here today was how AI can benefit not only large law firms, also smaller law firms, sole practitioners, access to justice organizations. We work some fantastic access to justice organizations in the state of Illinois. And so this is a great example I want to very quickly highlight. Usually I like to live demo it, but I'm going to avoid it. So what has changed? Well, in the past, legal tech was a cottage industry. This is a photo of the one church in the town of Westport near the cottage where I spend my summers. And what that means is that using the metaphor of cars when they first came out. Cars when they first came out were luxury vehicles. 100 years ago, if you had a car, it was a fantastic car. It was as bespoke as it gets. It was the exact shade of leather you wanted. If you wanted to ride around in it, you put on, I don't know, a $2,000 suit or a really nice hat and drove around sort of your British manner, right? What changed that is that it stopped being built in workshops like this by enthusiasts that loved what they were doing but were limited by lack of resources when a certain American, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, came around and invented this. So the real sophisticated, hyper-operationally managed supply line. And that's sort of the era we're finally hitting with legal technology and AI. In terms of how that's possible, more and more you're going to see the AI companies creating legal technology partnering with real AI institutions, totally removed from legal technology, tying into some of the best and brightest minds in the world. Recently, we announced we partnered with the Vector Institute. So this is an institute up in Toronto. It's received hundreds of millions of dollars of government funding by the Canadian government because Canada is such a hotbed for AI. And some of the founding partners include AI companies you might have heard of like Google, Uber, and NVIDIA that builds the graphics processors that power modern AI systems. So to wrap up, remember I said I would come back to the robot thing. AI is not going to create a robot lawyer which replaces humans. It's here to empower us. Let us do our jobs better. I'm going to close on a quote from this guy. So I'm doing a lot of young versus old dudes from Silicon Valley. I just realized that. This is young Steve Jobs, not grumpy old Steve Jobs. And so Steve Jobs, wildly successful, very young in his life, he was asked at the very beginning of the personal computer revolution, people were starting to buy Apple IIs, and he was asked to explain what is the value of a personal computer. Yeah, some really rich people have bought it, but like, who really needs this? And he had this perfect line, very Steve Jobsy in the way he explained it. So he said that a personal computer is like a bicycle for your mind. And I think that applies perfectly to artificial intelligence and legal technology. So if you unpack that, let's think about what that means. A bicycle is a machine created by human ingenuity. It is powered by and directed by a human who is at the center of it. But by using that bicycle, a human is able to go farther than ever before possible and explore new areas. AI is going to do the exact same thing for your practice of law as well. Thank you very much.